Welcome back, folks. It's another great day here on Valiant Renegade. Make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Share this sucker out on the social medias. And do leave a comment before you head out today. Because this is where Hollywood comes to get put through the business and financial lens of reality. It's time. Renegade Online. Good to see everybody back once again. It's been a hot minute since we did a Renegade Nation show, about a week by my count, I think. It's been a busy week. Wanted to do something last week, but was traveling towards the end of last week. Just got home a couple hours ago from Tennessee. Had a really nice weekend. Renegade Jr. came up with me. Enjoyed kind of visiting Dollywood, going around for a little bit. I was up there on a bit of a personal project that I'm working on. So I'll fill you guys in later with whatever comes from that. But good to see some friends up there. Some of y'all were watching Force Light earlier. Got to hang out with Michelle and Nat for a little bit this weekend. Briefly, but we'll be back up there soon. Kind of continuing down this road, hopefully making a few more trips up there again. Basically I'm looking for some additional property up there is what I've been doing. It's so pretty. I was like, it's something I've always wanted to do. So I've kind of been shopping around up there for some things. So hopefully be back up in a couple of weeks to keep looking, but had a great weekend. We've got about 100 of you, it looks like, as we're starting the show right now. Please smash the like button and the share button. Good start for a little channel with 1,550 subs or whatever. We need to get those numbers up. We got a lot to go through tonight, but we're going to focus in on what's happening, because this is always, honestly, and this sounds crazy, one of my favorite times of year, because we get, for those of you that don't know, June is usually when we get some really big Supreme Court rulings handed down. And we've got a bunch that happened in the past few days while I was traveling. So I wanted to take an opportunity to discuss some of those. And of course, one of the ones that everybody's really talking about is this one here. Supreme Court okayed a Tennessee ban on quote unquote gender affirming care for kids, a setback for transgender rights. I mean, and we'll talk about, this word rights gets thrown around, a lot, including by certain Supreme Court justices that, in my humble layman opinion, don't seem to understand from where rights are derived. It's not Congress, hint, hint. But we'll talk about all of that. But I'm going to go on record as saying, based on some of this, and we have something else today that I think just broke as I was driving home that kind of backs into this story as well. I think 2025 is going to go down as the year that the as some would call it, the gay mafia, this hyper radicalized section of the social political LGBTQ movement. This will be the year that the backs were broken, and the pendulum started swinging back the other way. Because if you felt like for the last 5 or 10 years that you've been taking crazy pills, watching these people run roughshod over society and kids in many cases, you're not on crazy pills. It was real. And finally, we're seeing some sense come into play. But we're going to talk about all of this from a news perspective, an analysis perspective, and of course, a legal perspective. And for that, we have somebody joining us that's going to help us kind of walk through some of these big decisions of the Supreme Court, for good or ill, and what it all means. Joining me is Ron Coleman. How you doing, sir? Uh-oh. Ron came in and then summarily, he must have yeeted himself from backstage. Ron, come on back when you can. We had a technical issue. Hang on, we'll try this again. Ready? 1, 2, 3. The great Ron Coleman.
I doubt, I guess,
There you are. Okay. You kind of glitched for a second. We got you now.
There I am.
So, yeah, I had one of the probably
what a month, what a week.
Really, I mean, it truly is. I mean, there have been some big changes. I mean, we had this up here a second ago before you popped in. This was the one that jumped out at everybody, and we'll talk about this one because that's a big one. It looks like we lost. I don't know. Ron is having some internet connectivity issues. While Ron is resetting, I think he's got some glitchy stuff going on. Let me grab some of these super chats that came in. Araxis for $2. Still can't membership gift. Sigh. Slacking. I know. I haven't turned them on yet. I have not had the time to even dive into it. We'll get there. But thank you for the $2, man. Packing Proton says, I've only heard the positive of the big, beautiful bill. What's the negative? All I know is taking more home per week is good. All right. To be perfectly fair, I have not studied this thing, and I'll tell you why. I learned years ago that the problem with these things is that they are so fluid and they're so enormous that what might be the case on Monday could have been changed radically or otherwise by Wednesday. And it's nightmarish to keep up with. So, and unfortunately, and I know this sounds pessimistic, but there seems to be little that us peons can do to affect what a lot of these idiots in Washington, Republicans and Democrats alike, will get behind. So now that the bill looks like it's actually moving forward, I'm going to be a little bit more attentive to the specifics in it. Now, there are some tax cuts, to my understanding, or at least there were in the last iteration that I glanced at, making a lot of the previous tax cuts that were implemented by Trump extended, not necessarily more permanent, which is a good thing. But then again, I don't like how these tax cuts have a sunset on them, and this is deliberately manipulated by Congress in order to have a talking point for the next election cycle, which is just a complete. It's a bullshit tactic, but they do it knowing that's what it's for. Okay, and the American people have largely woken up to this one. But as far as the specifics, I know there's been a lot of complaining out there by some Republicans in Congress that said that this bill is terrible. Others are celebrating it. Honestly, I do not have enough information following the last couple of weeks of changes and shifts in this thing that I've even bothered to lay eyes that deeply on it again, because the last several dozen attempts I've made when these kind of bills have come forward, they change so much from start to finish that everything you thought you knew several days earlier is suddenly bunk. So, but I will take some time this week to look at it now that it looks like it has been finalized. So hang on to those thoughts, Packing Protons, because there might be a lot of good stuff in it. There also might be a lot of crap in it that wouldn't surprise me 1 ounce. MedMut for $10. Listen to Friday's, I guess it means Timcast IRL today, and touched on Ketanji Brown Jackson dissent. Good God, Navin Johnson was dumb, but at least he knew the difference between shit and Shinola. I mean, is she a DEI hire or an auto pen nominee? Could be a combination of both. And look, I know that the whole issue of me referring to Ketanji Brown is the most egregious DEI hire in the history of this country has rustled some feathers the wrong way for some people. I kind of don't care. It's just a fact. When you have a man like Clarence Thomas sitting just a few chairs down from her on the same dais, one of the most brilliant legal scholars, one of the most brilliant constitutional minds in this country's history. We have been blessed with Clarence Thomas's just judicial wisdom for 3, 4, whatever it's been, 3 decades at least now. And the crap that man went through during his nomination process is just absolutely it was disheartening to see what he went through, but what we got out on the other side is nothing short of amazing. Clarence Thomas is the exact opposite of DEI. He is not a DEI hire. He is a man that is brilliant and deserves to be sitting on that court. The same, in my humble opinion, cannot be said, even remotely, for Ketanji Brown Jackson. And while Ron is kind of getting resituated, he's tried to pop in and out a couple of times. I think he's having some real tech issues, so that's okay. Ron, go ahead, reboot the computer if you need to. I know I feel like I'm glitching on StreamYard right now. I'm seeing some StreamYard issues. Like I'm looking at my StreamYard screen and I'm having internet difficulties. So it might not just be me, it might be StreamYard. And my YouTube thing in the background just went kaput. This is bizarre. So we are having some issues tonight, folks. So stay tuned. Sorry about that. We have been having a lot of StreamYard issues lately. I don't know what they're doing, but it is problematic. But I want to just bring something up real quick, to kind of the point I was making in terms of Ketanji Brown. I see Ron, it's backstage again. But let me go ahead just to kind of send this point home. This is one of the things that we'll bring up after we discuss some of the particulars of the cases. This is what bugs me. We have a Supreme Court justice who likes to use TikTok colloquialisms and teenager banter in actual written arguments, which is just incredible. This is from one of the cases this week where Ketanji Brown Jackson was on the dissenting side, wrote the dissenting opinion here. And you don't even need to know the context of this particular thing yet. We'll get there. But just understand that she actually wrote in a dissent instead to the majority of the court, the Supreme Court, the other 8 members on there, or at least the 6 members that voted the other way. She said instead to the majority, the power-hungry actors are, wait for it, the district courts. And this was something where the Supreme Court told the lower courts that, your powers in terms of trying to slap down Donald Trump, you might be getting over your skis a little bit. But let's see what Ron thinks. He's back. Ron, there you are. Bring you back in now. I know StreamYard has been giving us fits lately.
Might have been a resources issue here. I might have had too much. Might have been asking too much of the old PC here. So I apologize to America.
No problem. But yeah, Ron, wait for it.
Great point, Valiant. It is really distressing. It's childish.
It really is. I mean, is this something you ever expected to see? And again, absent the pure context of this case, which, crazy enough, we don't even need just to marvel at what's been done here. But did you ever expect to see a sitting Supreme Court justice write in an official, either a affirmation or a dissent in this case, language like this that looks like, did she
It looks
ask
like a tweet?
It looks like a tweet. It looks like her, if she's got a 13-year-old kid, it looks like that kid wrote this.
But I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you necessarily noticed this, but if I can share for a second.
Sure.
Yeah, let me just make sure I haven't made this mistake before. This is my share screen. Yep. This is my header now on X. I don't know how long I'm going to keep it, but.
Oh, yes. Amy Coney Barrett's SmackDown. We got to talk about that one too, because I mean,
wow.
I think I have it saved, and I don't think I've got it. I think I caught it the day I was driving, but there was, and I have to go back and find it, in one of Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissents, she wrote that and I have to go find the exact phrasing, but it was something to the effect of saying that the court was now going to deny a right that Congress had granted. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been a student of American history for all my life, and I don't remember at any point being taught that Congress is the body that grants rights. Because if Congress can grant rights, that means that they can be then taken away for people, and
so
then they're
Congress
not
doesn't
really
grant
right.
constitutional rights. It does. You got a right to your Social Security. That was something that was passed by Congress.
Privilege versus that's always the kind of lingo I get
but
into. I look
but
at rights as
she
absolute, something that
she
can't be
just
taken away.
missed it. She's completely unhinged,
Yeah.
untethered to the Constitution. Just like it said in that quotation. I don't want to get ahead of where you want to go, but you make a great point about the immaturity, and the lack of professionalism here. Wait for it. Wait for it.
Yeah. I mean, she had this thought in her head and then wrote it out, or her clerk wrote it out, which is maybe even worse. And then she looked at it, read it, proofed it. Her staff, her clerks read it and said,
right.
Yeah, good to go. Good to go. I cannot, not to even mention the fact that her argument was wrong. but again, there's the way it was phrased. So let's talk about some of these things, because like I mentioned before, I think one of the big takeaways of this week is going to be the fact that 2025 may go down in history as the year that the radical left-wing LGBTQ, some call it the gay mafia movement, died. Oh, we lost Ron again. Dag nabbit. All right. Ron is having some issues tonight, man. And he's back. Hey, there you go. I know. So no, what I was saying was I'm wondering if 2025 is going to be considered the year that this radical LGBTQ kind of gay mafia, some people call it, movement goes down as this was the year it died. Or at least it was the year that it began to just kind of shrivel.
It's the Queen.
Uh-oh. You still there?
I'm still here, but you know what I'm going to do? It may very well be that the virtual background is killing me.
Okay.
So I'm gonna lose it, and now I'm just green.
There you go. That's all right.
It's not easy being green.
It's not easy.
But,
no, you're right, Kermit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because apparently that's a big resource. Hog. Although I got a lot of RAM on this box, but okay. Yes, big. This is a huge year. It's a huge month. I mean, what the decisions that have come down in June of 2025 will not soon be forgotten.
Yeah.
So you've got the media. I'll follow your lead.
Yeah, so let's go through this one first. And I just somebody reminded me out here. I forget new channel. So Ron Coleman is now modded. He's now wrenched on Renegade Nation.
Very important.
Yes. Because somebody even said there was a glitch in the Matrix with Ron. Thank you, Neo. And Marcus Quintus for 2. Wrench Coleman. Yes, we just did that. Thank you, Marcus, for reminding me. Sherry Lynn for 5. Can a judge be impeached for pure incompetence and being an embarrassment to the court? No, I wouldn't.
Not really,
think,
no.
Ron.
No.
It could be interesting.
Let's put it this way. There's nothing stopping Congress from doing that, because impeachment is entirely a political process. But
true,
impeachment is supposed to be for high crimes and misdemeanors. And if being incompetent were a high crime and a misdemeanor, then just about everyone in Washington would be swinging from the gibbet.
Yes, 538 of them on Capitol Hill, pretty much. Something along those lines. All right, so let's go to this. This was the big one from last week. The United States Supreme Court okays a Tennessee ban on gender-affirming care for kids, a setback to transgender rights. Now, before we get into the article, I'm going to say this at the outset. This is obviously from the AP. It's a left-leaning organization, let's be honest. I absolutely despise the phrase gender-affirming care. It is offensive to logic. It is offensive to reality. Let's be honest. If we were actually performing gender-affirming care on these children, then little Billy, when he walked into the doctor's office and said, "Mommy told me that my real name is Susie," then the doctor, as a gender-affirming moment, would say, "No, Billy, you're a boy. And mommy is screwing with your head, and I'm calling Child Protective Services." Okay? My opinion.
You're Valiant. You're right that when we give in on the language points, those are losses.
Right.
Those are losses, and they move the Overton window.
Yes.
But having said that, we're not going to expect any help from AP. That's for sure.
No, we're not. I just wanted to call that out because, again, I'm like you. I am a words have meaning kind of guy, right? And I one of the things that I learned early on, and people in this audience know, I was a Rush baby since I was a teenager, right? Thanks to my dad. And Rush was always a big advocate for words have meaning. And one of the things that he hated the most, and one of the things that he railed against the hardest, was when radicals, particularly the left radicals, would try to change the meaning of words in the public discourse.
Well, I mean, Valiant. And Ron Coleman's, big issue in the last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Genocide.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean, the words, they're ready with. What did they start doing with when I started enforcing the law?
Mm-hmm.
Kidnapping. Kidnapping.
Right.
ISIS kidnapping.
Kidnapping. That's a great. I didn't even think about that one, but you're spot on.
And that's what Marxists do. That's what Marxists do. They take over the language, and everything is a psyop.
Yes. Yeah, and it really is. And right, you want to try to put, and again, it's like it's changing the word from this is an illegal alien to now the left wants to change this to it's immigrant. It's like, no. We're not going to pollute the meaning of the word immigrant, which typically historically has connoted a legal immigration process versus somebody who has come in by illegal methodology. But now everybody is going to be caught under this banner. It's the same thing with gender affirming care. And applause to the Supreme Court for not falling for the political side of this argument, which was, in my opinion, devoid of any legal merit. And apparently the Supreme Court agreed to it.
Before we discuss it, I'm going to throw something up. Again, they're going to throw something up.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to go like this, okay? Legal insurrection, January 1st, 2025. Excuse me for showing off.
Here we go.
Okay, there's the boss, Bill Jacobson. Jane Coleman, this is her prediction on New Year's Day. In a 6-3 decision, SCOTUS will uphold Tennessee's transgender care ban for minors because the law doesn't discriminate based on sex. Its restrictions are based on age and use, treating both sexes equally. And because transgender care is a hotly debated area of medicine, the court will rule that it should be left to lawmakers who take expert testimony and are accountable to the people they represent, not judges, to determine state policy. Why am I, besides the fact that I'm proud of being married to someone who is smarter than I am? I mean, better
And
looking and smarter.
You said that prediction for this very case that we have on the screen right now, let me pull it back up. That prediction was made 6 months ago.
Right. She nailed it. And she also, here's the point. She also gives us the talking point. The Supreme Court didn't wade into the waters of whether this was a good law, whether we should call it gender affirming. Okay, none of that. Supreme Court said, you know what? We don't make laws.
That's an amazing concept.
And in the background, we're hearing Obergefell. We're hearing the court said, right? In Obergefell, the court said, listen, states just keep outlawing or approving, depending on what their voters say or what the legislatures say. They're making their own laws about same-sex marriage. We don't like that. So we're going to invent a new right under the Constitution. And Supreme Courts here said, without getting into Obergefell, they're not ready to revisit that yet. But they said, and this is why you're so right about 2024 in terms of being a banner year. This is the time when we start deciding based on the Constitution. What the Constitution says is anything that the federal government, going back to your original point, Congress isn't the source of rights. The rights start with the people, with God, the people to the states to the federal government. Under our constitutional system, states can and do regulate medicine. And we are not going to second guess the medical policy decisions in the state of Tennessee. We're not even saying, because guess what? It's not a setback for transgender rights. It's a step forward for states' rights and for parents' rights.
Exactly.
And by the way, for human rights.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that always kind of becomes a hallmark with these sort of cases, especially, and again, I look at this as there may be something deeper here to take into account. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but I just want to, I want to pull up some of the particulars here with this Tennessee case. This was something where the state of Tennessee, the legislature of Tennessee, last year passed a ban on any type of medical, quote unquote, medical practice, medical treatment for, children under the age of 18 whose parents, because ultimately it is the parents seeking this. The children do not have the legal capacity to make this decision on their own. This is something being brought in by the parents, trying to bring their parents to doctors and saying, oh, my child, Billy, might really be Susie. Can we start little Billy on hormone replacement therapy or hormone therapy or whatever it's called? I might be using the wrong medical jargon. And then eventually getting to the point where we have some serious surgeries, quote unquote, taking place that's going to radically alter this child for life. And this child is not even old enough to really understand what he or she is doing to him or herself. But from the AP here, the Supreme Court on Wednesday, this was last week, upheld Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care. Again, it's not really gender-affirming, for transgender minors, which, again, I'll also argue that there's no such thing. There's only what the parents project onto their kids, I think, to large degree, or what TikTok projects onto kids, a jolting setback for transgender rights. The justice's 6-3 decision, guess who the 3 dissenting ones were?
Every single time.
The ones that for years I have said, these are going to be the 3 worst judges in the history. We'll get there. The 6-3 decision in a case from Tennessee effectively protects from legal challenges many efforts by President Donald Trump's Republican administration and state governments to roll back protections for transgender people. Another 26 states have laws similar to Tennessee's. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the conservative majority opinion that a law, or in this case, just the majority opinion for the court, but which is mostly with conservatives, thank God at this point, that the law banning puberty blockers, this is the Tennessee statute banning puberty blockers, and hormone treatments for minors. I'm not even going to say trans minors because, again, this is a language war. It's just minors, right? They're trying to put in there, they're trying to say, well, these are trans minors. Like these were children born with some kind of genetic defect or something. They're not. They're not. These are just normal kids with XX and or XY chromosomes out there. I grant you that in very rare cases, we will have an actual genetic defect that does occur. That is a different situation. 99+% of the cases we're talking about here for this particular debate do not involve children that are born with genetic defects or genetic mutations, okay? Another 26 states, and this is key, have laws similar to Tennessee's. So Tennessee said no puberty blockers, no surgeries. We're not going to have doctors practicing this brand of Valiant's opinion quack medicine on children, okay? If that child reaches the age of 18 and then makes a decision on their own as a legal adult that they want to go seek some type of cosmetic surgery for themselves and get on medication, and they want to find a doctor that is amenable to providing them with that, and it flies under state law, then at the age of 18 as a legal adult, they can make that decision, but not before, right? Just the same as a kid in Tennessee can't go out and buy a rifle before they turn 18. A kid in Tennessee can't go out and buy a car on their own before 18 because you can't sign a legal document. A kid before they're 18 can't commit to a contract of a 30-year mortgage before they're 18 anywhere, right? It's kind of simple. When you make these big, major life-altering decisions, be a legal adult. And that's all this bill does not, I mean, Ron, by my understanding in Tennessee has not banned legal adults from seeking the type of medical care, cosmetic or otherwise, that they so desire, right?
No.
So it's just kids. So we go back to the situation where what has angered the left so much, and I just, before you and I went live, I just cut a video on a brand new breaking news story from Disney Pixar that, lo and behold, we were right. And the first iteration of the new Pixar movie, Ilio, this week that bombed, Disney's going to lose $300 million on it. It was radically altered. We told everybody it was reshot a whole second time. The rumor was because the first time, there was a very strong theme. The kid was gay, the 11-year-old. Guess what? It turns out it was true. The Hollywood Reporter confirmed it. Pixar changed it. There is this weird obsession with the left of they don't just want to live their own lives and be who they are, which nobody has an issue with that, right? As long as you're not infringing on other people's lives and rights, everybody's cool. But they have this weird obsession that they want to push this onto children. And we are just wrapping up what I hope is the last Pride Month ever, where we've been treated to countless videos once again of family-friendly parades in various American cities with children as, 3, 4, 5-year-old children standing on the streets.
But Valiant, you really kind of get that's the Mahmoud versus Young case versus Taylor case. I mean, we can say we can have this discussion then too, but that was the decision this week. from Justice Alito saying families that don't, in Maryland, if a school board decides to put, these sicko books into the school curriculum, parents are not powerless to let them to allow them to do so. They can pull their kids out. What they tried to do is to weave it into the entire curriculum. This was an English class, so we'll get to that case when we get to that case. But that, I mean, I don't know how long you want to go on this tonight, but
we can go.
You're right, man. You're nailing it.
Again, it all goes back.
Pushback. It's the Supreme Court and Donald Trump. The majority of the Supreme Court and Donald Trump. And that's pretty much it. Like, we're not getting it from Congress. We're getting it maybe from some state legislatures. But they are standing up for basic, people mock the term family values.
Yeah.
Basic, traditional, I'm not even saying right or wrong. Just give people the space. And, Disney just can't find it within itself to allow this to happen. But this goes back to the many discussions we had on Valiant Renegade, where you've heard me say the company is so culturally steeped in its commitment to wokeness that you could change the board, you could change the CEO, and neither of which is going to happen. It wouldn't make a difference. They can't change.
That's the problem, right? And that was my rant the other night. Was about it's going to be the Wall Street people have got to wake up, because we had an analyst report that talked about how audiences don't want to see original content animated anymore, and I had to push back on that. It was ridiculous. I said no, it's because of what you just said. It's because they don't trust people like Disney anymore. Well, the state of Tennessee, the voters of Tennessee in this case, frankly, obviously, they didn't trust the medical community anymore to make the right decisions for kids. They needed a law. Tennessee needed to pass a statute out there that said, no, we're not doing this anymore, right? Oh, well, let parents do what they want. Well, you know what? Most states out there, if not all of them, as far as I know, have statutes out there that demand, it might be your kids, but if you put your kids into a motor vehicle, that child will be in a child seat at a certain, under a certain age. That child will be in a seatbelt.
I'm going to buy some crack for my kids.
Right. It's like you have to put your kid in a seatbelt, right? No, you can't be a negligent parent and let your 2-year-old wander around the neighborhood by themselves for hours on end. No, you can't just leave your 5-year-old locked in a car while you go into the casino or Walmart or your crack house. There are laws that say, we as a society have a basic set of standards here that we expect that, yes, you can raise your children in the manner you see fit, but we are going to set rules as a moral society that says, no, you can't do harm to your children, be it intentionally or through negligence, right? We have laws everywhere almost that address these things. This was another one of these instances in Tennessee that says, you know what? We're not going to take a 12-year-old and, who was just entering puberty and adolescence, and then allow a doctor, which 20 years ago, we didn't even have to pass a law on this because we weren't insane and the medical community hadn't lost its mind, okay, to where that they would take a 12-year-old or an 11-year-old or, God forbid, even younger, right, and start putting them on puberty blockers or medicines otherwise that were designed to explicitly contradict the natural biological growth of their body in a healthy manner. I mean, it's the most ridiculously bizarre thing. So now they have to wait. But Ron, you brought up something interesting, and I'm going to go back, to, again, something in the old Rush days, something he said that I always loved and that has been absolutely true. The left, they can't ever seem to get, at least I'd say 90+% of the time, they really can't ever seem to get the craziest, most radical elements of their desires pushed through legislatively, statutorily or otherwise. they always have used the courts. They have always put judges in place, especially at the federal level, that would, by design, legislate from the bench. And what the Supreme Court did with this case and with others this week, I think, as you correctly pointed out, is that they said, no, you know what? The court is not the place for legislation. Legislation is Article 1. We're Article 3. We don't do that, and the court is not going to legislate from the bench. That isn't our job. The hilarious thing is that arguably all three of those judges on here that were on the other side of this case, the three dissenting judges, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan, have all been steeped in legislating from the bench, I would argue, for many, many
You would
years.
argue, I mean, it couldn't be these decisions of the last couple of weeks. They're essentially admitting it. I mean, you know, Brown and Sotomayor are admitting.
Wait for it.
Sotomayor has never been a heavy lifter. I think Brown is better at using big words than Sotomayor is. But she's more juvenile.
Yeah.
The killer here is not the killer. It does not kill her, but the notable thing here is Kagan. Kagan was dean of Harvard Law School. Kagan knows. Kagan understands. She is so committed ideologically that she signed on to these opinions of the last couple of weeks by Sotomayor and Jackson, which she knows are bad law. For example, the nationwide injunction case, she herself went on TV in an interview, Kagan, and said these nationwide injunctions are ridiculous. Not how government's supposed to work. She signed on to Sotomayor. I mean, no, that was also Brown. All right, this is, you know, I mean, to some extent we're dealing with well-trodden ground here, but at least we have the pleasure of being able to enjoy it for a change in the middle of this, or, you know, it's the end of June, at the end of a very nice run of wins, not for conservatism, for common sense.
Yeah.
For just plain common sense. What do regular people want their governments, their schools, their families to look like? Where do they want the lines drawn about choice and about who makes choices?
That's just it. And most people don't want, at least I mean, I know there's probably a few out there, but most people I think in this country, I dare say, short of a poll, and maybe we can talk to our buddy Mark at Rasmussen about this one, but I'd bet you if you did a poll, you'd find out that the vast majority of Americans, both Republican and Democrat, do not want unelected government folk making decisions on their behalf because they are unaccountable, right? And that could be a federal judge, that could be a federal bureaucrat in an executive agency. You know, most people just don't like that, and it goes to this. You know, you see here. Efforts to regulate transgender people's lives, right? Again, this is from the AP. This is their language. They're trying to shape an argument. They're not really reporting.
In other words, efforts to regulate everyone's lives are okay.
Right.
But when it comes to children's lives,
yeah.
Once a teacher, once a school librarian, once a guidance counselor, once a creepy, you know, social studies teacher,
social worker,
that a child is transgender.
Yeah, there it is.
That's a transgender person now.
Exactly. That's just it. I mean, that, you know, somebody that got an education degree at the local community college that's now a public school teacher basically is now the arbitrator for who is transgender, what 5-year-old is transgender. That's what it boils down to. That's what they want to get to, right? They want to remove parents from the equation because parents are an impediment to their social design in a lot of cases. So this is why the AP shapes this argument. Efforts to regulate transgender people's lives. The decision comes amid other federal and state efforts to regulate the lives of transgender people. Okay. Including which sports competitions they can join and which bathrooms they can use. Now, again, I find this laughable. This issue was decided decades ago with Title IX. It's the whole purpose of why that exists when it comes to especially college athletics. Okay. We have men's sports leagues and we have women's sports leagues. The fact that we now have to go in and relitigate what is a woman is a testament to the sad state of affairs that is society in 2025.
Folks, you're hearing it. You're hearing it from the man. Everything he's saying is right.
Look, here's the thing. States move on trans youth care. So again, the AP continues to peddle the language, right? Several Republican-led states have taken steps to bar access to, let's just call it what it is, medical mutilation of kids, which for people under 18 typically involves puberty blockers or other hormone treatments. Some Democrat-led states are instituting protections. So again, you look at the map here and it's pretty much exactly as you would tend to expect. You got all those, restricted. My state here in Louisiana, Texas right next door, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, where Renegade Jr. and I were all weekend. All the states that you would expect have express protections when it comes to, no, we're not going to have, what many people would consider medical malpractice against children. And they said no. And the states where, and basically what these protections are, they call it protected, right? And look at where they are. It's the left coast. It's the East Coast. It's exactly where you'd think it would be. And what protections, they say protections, right? Who's being protected? Not the kids, really. The parents, probably from some type of liability. Doctors certainly are protected from any kind of legal liability. I would think that's what the protections are, Ron, right?
The protections above all are for pharmacy companies and healthcare providers.
There you go.
To print money with these programs. And by the way, there's a very interesting discussion going on in the chat, which is a very reasonable one.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to give credit where it's due. One of our friends is making a point, which is that, look, there are people who have gender dysphoria.
Sure.
The big blue horses.
Okay.
And she says, he or she says, I implore you, sir, and I'm not being facetious at all. I'm reading this really in the spirit in which it's intended. Please tread judiciously. It is truly heartbreaking what these kids and families are going through. Activists, politicians, doctors are not helping, making it worse. Okay. Now, big blue horses, your humanity is entirely appropriately recognized.
Sure.
You should understand, of course, that from the point of view of the people who support these bans, like in Tennessee, they believe, as I do, by the way, and I think Valiant agrees, that they're actually making it less worse, because these are decisions that children are not fit to make. Parents are not fit to make them for their. Frankly, under my religious belief, no one is fit to make it. God gives you a body.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, not all bodies can be like Valiant's and mine, which are, Adonises and, perfect specimens. But I got to tell you, I'm just going to completely out of the blue. I spoke today with a prospective client. who is a transgender person, a former United States Marine, who came across on Zoom rather convincingly. I wouldn't put her in the Miss America pageant, but I say her out of respect for how she wants to be called. I've certainly seen less masculine looking women, more women in the world who don't look so different from her. She agrees with my politics. And from her point of view, she said, look, this is just how I've always felt my whole life. And I always pushed myself into masculine things to make up for it. But now that's all, now I'm in my 60s. This is how I live my life. It was a great discussion, and it was a great meeting. That's not what we're talking about, because this is an adult who made a choice for himself, herself as an adult. This is not a child, and this is not what the Tennessee law and also what the situation in Mahmoud versus Taylor, the other Supreme Court case that came down, that said, if you're giving these weird, genderqueer type books to kids in school, parents absolutely have something to say about it. We're talking about a cultural, political movement, going back to what you said 15 minutes ago, to target children, to screw up their heads, to screw up their perspectives, to undermine their families. What an adult does, again, you and I are entitled to our opinions. My religious belief, it's a terrible sin. But I'm allowed to sit here and have my opinions about every single one of you, especially those of you in the chat. I hate every one of you, and everyone. You all know, especially. I really like Juliet, but Marcus Squintus knows I can't stand him, right? But the point is, you have to treat people with respect and dignity. So that's not what we're talking about here. And Blue Horses, if you're still in the chat, your point is well taken. We're not, nothing that Valiant said was mocking the people, but rather just give families, lawmakers, doctors, schools, movie studios, let normal people live normal lives. And with respect to the teensy-weensy percentage of people who don't fit into the easy categories, let's be kind. Let's be charitable. Let's be gracious. But let's not pretend that, what's the percentage of kids in college today who identify as non-binary? 20%? 40%?
Of the generation, yeah. It's gotten to like ridiculous. Well, I don't know if it's non-binary or if it's 20% that now identify as something on the LGBTQ spectrum. I've seen a few different stats on that, but the point is, either way you look at it, and it may just be non-binary, but either way you look at it, it's this massively obscene overperformance compared to just 1 or 2 generations ago. It's insane. And the idea out there is, oh, well, now that the gloves are off, so they can all just kind of come out. It's like, I don't think that's what it is. When you look at the proliferation of social media, things like TikTok and everything, especially, where it seems to have been almost engineered to popularize certain things, and teenagers tend to follow fads. That's just kind of how it is. And you have a lot of people out there. And again, when you keep telling me that these movements want to try to get to kids younger and younger and younger, and we've seen how many school teachers out there, it's terrifying, that wind up on libs of TikTok just reposting their own videos, showing the classrooms and all the stuff they have in it, what they talk to their kids about, and how many different colors of the rainbow they have spray painted in their hair, and how many nose rings they've got. It's like, you got to wonder, it's like, why are people like this teaching kids? Where did all this come down from? A lot of this has come down from more left-leaning organizations, teachers unions and whatnot, that have shoved this into the curriculum. in this other case you're talking about, where yes, parents are going to have a right to make a say so on what kind of things are put into that curriculum in their children's classrooms and whatnot.
But we wouldn't even be here if it hadn't been for the sexualization, the overt sexualization of society that, let's face it, everything they said would happen if Elvis was allowed to swivel his hips on the Ed Sullivan show happened, and much worse. But what it really, really ratcheted up in the last 20 or 30 years, and that plus social media, and I mean, my kids were, not only did they not have smartphones growing up, they didn't have cell phones at all. That wasn't their job.
Yeah.
Their job wasn't to interact with, the world. It was to interact with the environment that we that we chose for them. And they were all outstanding scholars, and they're all, happy, normal, masculine Ron Coleman sons. Now, listen, that many people who grew up in environments like my kids grew up in, there are people who it didn't turn out that way for them. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I mean, just Valiant and I'm speaking for you because you and I think really, again, we're on the same page on so many things. Not so much on the seafood because I can't eat that, but what we're talking about here is putting things back in their place, grown-up things for grown-ups, childish things for children. This also goes, in a way to my point about, and I try to be very delicate on your other channel, which is Disney adults.
Yeah, pretty much.
But since some of them are some of our best friends, I don't really want to.
So can we blame Elvis for all this? Yes, I guess so.
Thank you.
And I had a few earlier that StreamYard got out of order. Tennessee Tornado for 2 says, who becomes the 51st state, Canada or Renegade Nation? Place your bets. We got Marcus Quintus here for 5, says, good evening, everyone. Be sure to smash the like button and share this out. And happy 4th of July week. 249 years and still going strong. America. There you go. Hillis said for 5, so abortion is not healthcare. Hormones and surgery on kids is child abuse, and psychology needs to return to normal societal sensibilities. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy, huh? And that's another thing, when they did the what did they refer to it as? Was it women's health care or something like this? Again, it was trying to reshape the language, trying to, take the word abortion to quote unquote soften what the actual biological reality of that is, and change it to, oh, well, if you're not in favor of that, that means you're against women's health care. Right. That was, it's some of the most ridiculous arguments imaginable that they have tried to reshape. And I'm glad that society is pushing back on this perversion of language. Things are what they are. Right. Hillis says for 5, where are the Saturday cartoons at? Oh, yeah. Congress killed it. Marcus for 2. We got that one. And Archer Merchant for 5. What if, hear me out, the AI rebellion won't be like Terminator visualized, but a war against the non-binary? I don't know if they can detonate nukes that the way that Cameron's robots could. It maybe can they build Skynet? I maybe. But yeah, back to finish up this article real quick. Is this a devastating loss or a landmark victory? The AP asks about this one. Chase Strangio, the American Civil Liberties Union lawyer, the ACLU lawyer, we'll just leave it there, who argued the case for transgender.
We're being charitable and humane, so we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of Chase Strangio.
I had another name for the ACLU years ago. It was called the Anti-Christian Litigation Union. But anyway, whatever you want to call it. The lawyer from the ACLU who
Or
argued the
have it just all
case,
communist litigation.
the whole communist. Oh, I like that one. That's a good one. Who argued the case for, again, transgender minors, which let's don't exist, not in the case they're trying to say, and their families, called the ruling, quote, a devastating loss for transgender people, our families, and everyone. Here we go. Here's the last kicker. And everyone who cares about the Constitution.
No, that's what we call the no true Scotsman fallacy.
You want to explain that one?
I don't actually know the origin of it, so I'm going to read it off. No true Scotsman fallacy is an informal logical fallacy where someone attempts to defend a generalization by denying the validity of any counterexamples given. By changing the definition of who or what belongs to a group or category, the speaker dismisses examples that prove the generalization doesn't hold. So if you disagree with Mr. Strangio, then you're not someone who cares about the Constitution.
You're Hitler.
Philosopher Bradley Dowden explains the fallacy as an ad hoc rescue of a refuted generalization attempt. The following is a simplified rendition of the fallacy. Only on Valiant Nation, folks. Here it is. Person A. No Scotsman puts sugar in his porridge. Person B. But my Uncle Angus is a Scotsman and he puts sugar in his porridge. Person A. But no true Scotsman puts sugar in his porridge.
There you go.
Yeah,
this again, the argument, well, nobody cares about the Constitution. I think if you look at the ruling in a logical manner, again, we've gotten one of these rulings that effectively comes down to this is something for the states to decide, right? This is the hallmark of federalism. This is kind of what it was built for. The federal government was given very limited powers, and the states were left to decide everything else based on because the best government is the one that's closest to you, the one that you can control the easiest, vote for the easiest, or vote against the easiest. Ron?
And this is why some people, and I think, by the way, that they're wrong to do so. Some people consider Lincoln to really have been a tyrant because by prosecuting the Civil War, which he actually was duty bound to do as president, that's why he was not a tyrant. But the concept, the Civil War was a massive crisis of federalism because the southern states overplayed the states' rights hands. They said, if the constitutional process that we all agreed to in 1789 doesn't go our way, we'll take our ball and go home. All right, and the unionist argument was, well, no, that's not the deal that we made. But as a result of the success of the Civil War for the Union, we began the federalization of American, of American law and the American regime. And of course, that came to a head a second time over the related issue of civil rights in the 1950s. Complicated stuff. But the good thing about America is that we can have the discussions, and we can, the pendulum swings in different directions. Right now, I like the way it's going.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, look, kick this back to the states at the very least for now. At some point, could Congress come in and pass some federal legislation on the matter? And there's some people out there who would love to see that. There are others who wouldn't. I'm one of the ones that it's like, you know what? I would trust individual states more than I would trust Congress on this matter, at least in the long term.
And that means that you're also trusting California and
Right.
Massachusetts
That's it.
and New York, where freaking lunatics run these states, to
Yep.
which you can all say, here's the good news. You can leave California and move to a state that's more to your liking without ceasing to become an American. You don't have
That's
to leave
it.
your country. You don't have
We
to.
have 50 little experiments here. That's federalism. That's exactly it. We have 50 experiments in this country, and you can move between any one of them that you want, free of any penalty, free of any restriction, right? And to that end, I trust the fact that I'm going to have a lot easier time dealing with the politicians here in Louisiana or in Mississippi or in Texas if I live there, or Tennessee or Florida if I live there, than trying to affect 530 politicians that I don't get to vote for at the federal level in Congress. And that's the whole point of how this was set up. So if for right now this is a state's issue, and Texas and Mississippi and 30 other states out there can go ahead and make sure that they have the legal protections in place for the children that live in that state, then so be it. Yeah, that's it. That's it. I mean, but here you go. I mean, Mo Jenkins, a 26-year-old trans woman, began taking hormone therapy at 16, said she was disheartened but not surprised by the ruling. Trans people are not going to disappear, said Jenkins, a Texas native and legislative staffer in the state capitol. Texas outlawed the puberty blockers and hormone treatments for minors in 23. So to that end, Ron, can we relatively correctly assume that based on the ruling of this case when it comes to Tennessee, as all these articles seem to suggest, that these other laws in these other states that deal with the same, if not very similar issues, are pretty much going to be standing up as well?
Yeah, it seems very likely that they will. But let me just point out, you read that quote. This goes back to the federalism point. If you and your parents really believe at age 16 that believe that the happiness that you now represent and have achieved as a trans woman require you to get hormone therapy at age 16, and you can move to one of 20 some odd other states where you can get whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
And in fact, in states like Rhode Island, like they'll practically pay you to do it, because they're so busy virtue signaling at how they don't want, how they don't want to get to whatchamacallit, to say, they don't want to lose points in the culture war. They're even going out of their way to become like, hey, what do they call themselves? Trans sanctuary states.
Yeah, sanctuary cities and trans sanctuaries. Yeah. And look, that again, there's only so much you can do there. The voters of those states are going to have to make the changes there as well. I'm not a big fan of having sweeping legislation passed at the federal level, because again, that's not what the federal government, that's not what Congress was designed to do. I'm of the old school mindset that says, you know what Congress's powers were meant to be? It's in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. There's a list to provide for the general welfare of they list like about a dozen different items in there, build a Navy, build an Army, build postal roads, like the interstate system that we have, coin money, issue debt in the name of the United States. There were a very, very specific list of things that Congress could legislate and create statutes based around, and they've gone way outside the scope of that, because everything else that was not listed was meant to be left to the states to decide like this. In fact, one of the framers of the Constitution, I want to say it, I think it was Alexander Hamilton. It was one of the Federalist Papers, And at one point, he was asked when they were framing the Constitution, they were passing it around the colonies between 1787 and 1789, when it was ratified in September of that year. He made a comment to the effect of, listen, if we intended Congress to basically have broad scope powers, then there would be no purpose to writing Article 1. If we intended Congress to do anything they wanted and regulate everything and anything that they saw fit, then listing a limited scope of powers would be pointless in this document. So in other words, I mean, it was there for a reason, right? And whatever wasn't there, and this is why when they did the 10 amendments, right, the Bill of Rights, the last one in there, number 10, said, hey, whatever we didn't say here is left to the states and to the people. That's it. This is one of these times where I think the Supreme Court certainly got it right, because they looked at this and they said, this ain't on us. This is something that's left to the states and the people. But yes, you get the Supreme Court justices like the Ketanji Browns that want to do the wait for it and get angry about that. And
she really doesn't seem to understand her job.
No, and to that end, that Amy Coney Barrett quote. Wait, I had it pulled up here. I'm gonna pull it up so we can read and enjoy that real quick. And I know you had that other case that you wanted to kind of touch on here.
No, it's your bowl game, man.
I'm all for it. But I love this quote. This is the pull quote from Justice Barrett. I've never seen anything like this. I have not read a ton of Supreme Court decisions. You've probably read quite a bit more than I have, Ron. But Amy Coney Barrett says, and I quote, "We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's," that's Ketanji Brown Jackson's, "argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this: Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive," talking about Donald Trump, "while embracing an imperial judiciary." Now, that is a hell of a rebuke to hand another justice sitting 2 chairs down from you in a public opinion like this. And this case, if I'm not mistaken, Ron, this was on some of the lower inferior court federal judge injunctions against Trump and his executive constitutional powers, saying you can't do this. Every time Trump did something, a federal judge would say no. And people were going, now, wait a minute, who's actually running this country? An unelected federal judge, an inferior court judge, or the president that 80-something million people voted for, right?
There are 4 or 5 of these zingers in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sitting there reading this opinion and cackling. I think
if you got some other ones, let's see them. Yeah.
I think she said things that other judges, that male judges couldn't get away with.
We laugh, but that's kind of a sad thing, is that another judge, if it was Clarence Thomas or Alito or somebody else up there, John Roberts, that would make a comment that somebody else, or 3 in particular on the bench, that would decry sexism and all this, and would cause that judge to have to mute him or herself in this case of Amy Coney Barrett, because, that would be considered sexist. I mean, again, it's kind of a sad state of affairs, because, again, you look at the Supreme Court, in my opinion, right, these are supposed to be, everybody on the bench is supposed to be the most brilliant constitutional jurist in the country, right? That's who you theoretically want to put up there. Now, we've got some damn good ones, but we've got some damn bad ones too. So, but this was an excoriating. This was just terrible. I read this, I fell over. But yeah, and there were some other ones in there. And look, I know there's people out there that, I guess, some of the the sides of the aisle that Amy Coney Barrett has come down on, and some recent decisions have not made certain conservatives happy, and some people out there. I'm not saying I am or am not one of them. I'm trying to remember even the particular cases right now, but I did enjoy this from her very much. This in and of itself, not commenting on any other previous decision that she's made. But yeah,
Yeah, it's quite a zinger.
yeah, it really, really was. Also, Ron, I don't know if you saw this one, but I wanted to bring this up. I thought this was really fascinating. Did you know that actually in one of Ketanji Brown's dissenting opinions, she really came up with a brilliant piece. It was just she just simply wrote "Wakanda Forever" in it. You're muted, Ron. You're muted.
What are you saying, Valiant? What are you getting at?
I don't know. The Babylon Bee wrote it. It's satire, kids. It's a joke. So I mean, this this was their response to wait for it, and some of the and Amy Coney Barrett's response.
I think what a lot of people are asking is she really prepared to stay in this job for another 30 years? Is she going to have the patience for this? I mean, what's remarkable here is, no, there are a few things that are remarkable, but she is not in any way, and I don't think she ever will be, leading the court. In other words, there have been liberal justices who have had influence on the court. Mm-hmm. I don't think she's ever going to be that person. She has really so undermined her credibility, especially in the last few weeks.
That much
it's
seems
hard to imagine. And why does that matter? It matters because she's not going to enjoy the job if she's always dissenting. She's always dissenting. And a few weeks ago, in the beginning of the month, when Supreme Court opinions started coming out on more technical, traditional, dry issues, and there were a number of unanimous opinions, including one that by her. A lot of these folks, if you keep them away from the red button, they're fine. I mean, a lot of people, someone has to write the opinions on Social Security appeals and admiralty and securities law, and some of which are really complicated. And sometimes people who aren't as obviously talented are better suited to sitting down and spreading all the cards out of the table and working. It's almost like card counting. It's there I go. I'm back. Okay,
there you are. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I believe that she is, if things don't change very, very radically, and a lot's going to depend on who Donald Trump gets to appoint to the Supreme Court in the next 3.5 years. Big deal.
Yeah.
And if the Republicans must keep the Senate. They must keep the Senate. If they don't, then anything goes. If she doesn't grow out of this role as being the village idiot, which is really kind of how she's coming across now,
you're not wrong.
She's not going to have fun. And meanwhile, there are going to be numerous multi-7-figure opportunities for her to be appointed as an ornament.
Yes.
In any number of organizations and firms that would have her. So hard to, as long as now she will never resign while a Republican is in office. I get that.
No.
But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah. That's what's going to be interesting to see. I mean, look, I don't recall how old Sonia Sotomayor is, but I think she's probably about 70, maybe a
She's
little bit
not in
older.
particularly good health. She's about
She
10
is,
years older than I am.
yeah, she's
She's
not.
not she's not a
And
particularly robust woman.
Sonia Sotomayor was another one. I recall her confirmation hearings. She was another one that immediately scared the hell out of me because I remember at some point during her confirmation hearing, I was watching and she was asked a question, and this is 10 plus years ago now. This was during the Obama administration, obviously. Um, and she responded to the question by suggesting that in certain decisions that in America we may want to look to international law for some guidance on things. And I'm thinking to myself, dear God,
Well,
where are
that's
we?
actually so that is known as Stephen Breyer's particular
Mhm.
fetish.
Okay, I think I've heard that before. Now that you say that,
And you would hear him raise this in an oral argument,
mhm.
and any I mean, it's simply just an incredible insult to constitutional law, to
You have
American
one
sovereignty.
job on the Supreme Court, the Constitution. That's it. Not international law. Not. Again, some of these things I hear, but again, it goes back to the left wanting to use the courts to implement some type of social or political doctrine that they are otherwise completely unable to ever accomplish at a legislative level, right? They want the courts to sit there and implement something, finding some language somewhere in the Constitution or some precedent, which I'm not always a huge fan of, especially when the precedent flies in the face of the Constitution. But they want to try to find some language in there that allows them to manipulate or twist or pervert something to say, oh, yeah, and the argument keeps getting made with this transgender issue that it falls under the 14th Amendment of equal protection and all this. And we keep wanting to add more classes and more this and that out of thin air, that every time we turn around, something
And the
else
Supreme
applies
Court
to.
has not resolved yet, and they have not resolved that. It's
Mhm.
I don't think they're going to go the wrong way on it, but we wouldn't be here if it weren't for Gorsuch's ruling.
Mhm.
Obviously, in whatchamacallit, I'm a retard with case names, but the employment discrimination case. I'm sure
Mm.
that the guys in the chat know what I'm talking about. I'm beginning to grow fatigued. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we're winding it down. This one came out today. I just kind of wanted to go to this one real quick because this I saw this when I got home just a little bit before we started. So in the wake of some of these rulings that we're talking about, the Supreme Court has ordered judges to revisit previous decisions on transgender health plans, birth certificates, in the wake of the ruling from last week. And part of this has to deal with there have been executive orders from certain governors out there, laws in states saying, you know, no, we're not going to allow changes on birth certificates because you decided XYZ. And then some of this was for insurance plans, and I found that to honestly be the most fascinating because this is, again, this is incredibly problematic. There is a huge biological difference, and especially what that means is in terms of insurance. Speaking of somebody who's been doing this for 20 years, actuarially, yes, there is a huge difference in pricing risk between men and women, right? Actual real men versus actual real women. This happens for life insurance. This happens for disability. This happens for long-term care. This happens for regular medical insurance. There's a reason that actuaries break these things up on a male versus female basis, right? Insurance plans, another issue that had been pending for months at the Supreme Court, according to CNN's article here, dealt with health insurance plans that do not cover quote unquote transgender care. Now, again, we're talking about what amounts to this is elective surgery, elective medical procedures. Remember, insurance is meant to cover risk, right? The risk of you having an unexpected illness, the risk of you getting injured and have to go to a hospital and have a cast put on a broken arm, risk, the medical risk of you
All
having
those videos, Valiant, of, why men have shorter lifespans.
right. Right. It's like a
Some
Jackass
guys,
movie, right?
climbing up on roofs.
Exactly. That's just it. Insurance like this is meant to indemnify you against risk. Now, an insurance policy can't solve your medical issues, but they can indemnify you to a certain point of the financial risk that comes with treating the risk of getting injured, treating or the occurrence of getting injured or the occurrence of getting sick, right? If I want to go out, this is like telling insurance companies, you know what? If my wife decides to go out and she decides she wants some triple F boobs, then you have to pay for her boob job, right? The point is like if you want to go out and get a facelift, a tummy tuck, liposuction, right? Now you're going to tell insurance companies they have to no. Why? Because that's elective. It's not medically necessary. That's not a medical risk. This is cause. So the same thing kind of goes here. You have a medically, regardless of what you think, you have a medically, biologically healthy person that all of a sudden you want to dictate, these states want to dictate that insurance policies are going to have to cover these very expensive, radical
For those of you
elective
above the
procedures.
Mason-Dixon line, he's referring to insurance.
Yes. Insurance.
Insurance.
Insurance. Yeah. So the point here is it's not meant to do that, and then everybody else has to pay higher rates for it. We already got completely screwed with Obamacare from 15 years ago now, and I told everybody before that passed and when it passed, I said, "You wait, our health insurance premiums are going to explode." Nuh-uh, because it's called the Affordable Care Act. That means it's going to go down. So everybody, all those people were, of course, wrong. Medical insurance premiums blew up by 2, 3, and then 4 and 5 times for the same policy just a year or two
Not
later.
only could you not keep your doctor, some of your doctors left medical practice.
Oh, I know a lot of medical doctors.
Wretched.
Oh, I know a lot of medical doctors that they stayed in practice, Ron, but they went full concierge. You pay them $1,500 a year, they're your doctor. And I'm gonna tell you what, you get a lot covered for that $1,500 a year. It's actually cheaper than the insurance, but that's another conversation.
A lot to be said for that. There are lawyers who claim to be concierge, have concierge practices, and they're probably guys who do a lot of work for, like tech bros or something.
Yeah.
And you line up 4 or 5 of those, and say, $150 a pop. You can call me 24/7, and I get, I solve all your problems, and you have my immediate attention, and it's a decent lifestyle.
Yeah, it works for them. But in this case, you had states that were saying that, you know what, we're going to make insurance companies cover X, Y, Z. So there were 2 cases apparently that concerned access to, quote unquote, again, gender affirming care, which it really isn't, for adults, while many of the other cases related to transgender rights to arrive at the court have dealt with minors. Last year, a Richmond-based federal appeals court ruled that North Carolina and West Virginia had violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause by excluding gender affirming care from their insurance plans. The plans were challenged by transgender residents in both states who were denied coverage for care needed to treat their gender dysphoria, which is interesting because usually you don't hear that term bantied about terribly much these days because it was long considered a psychiatric disorder, right? So now they're trying to use the psychiatric disorder that I haven't heard them want it to be affiliated with anymore because they don't want to treat it like a psychiatric disorder. But when it came to a legal argument, they went in and used the psychiatric disorder and saying, well, see, it's medically necessary. It's which way is it, guys and girls? Which one are we doing? Is it a psychiatric disorder in 2025 or is it not? Right? You got to pick your poison here.
And the poison you should pick is Renegade Nation.
There you go. We'll take that one.
That's the medicine that'll fix America.
Yeah.
Renegade Nation. Wednesday nights, or whatever night it ends up being.
Monday night. I know. It's
I
Monday
have
night
trouble
tonight.
with the days of the week.
I know. Well, I've been traveling the last 4 days, so I'm all screwed up. And it's like July. I'm going to try to use as my reset month to get back into the standard rhythm here. But I mean, this is
July's
one
not
of these.
famous for that. That's not known as one of the strengths of July, but all right.
It is. It is not. It is not. But here the point is that they use this 14th Amendment argument, saying equal protection, equal protection. You mentioned earlier that this was one of those. This is one of those arguments that the Supreme Court has not really addressed yet. So where do you think this is going from here? Because the indication from this article is today that they're asking, hey, these courts made these rulings saying that, oh, well, these insurance companies have to do this or they don't have to do that. And this is, Amendment 14, blah, blah, blah. How closer do you think? I mean, at what point does the Supreme Court really have to kind of jump in here? Because it seems like they're getting cases that are dealing with this issue. Although, like you pointed out, they don't seem to directly address that particular aspect.
The Supreme Court sat on this for too long, and it now has a mess to clean up. And it's going to be, it is not going to be an elegant process. There's going to be a lot of gnashing of teeth.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to mostly enjoy it.
I think it probably should be interesting. We'll grab a few super chats here. Albertus Magnus for 5. The tell on trans is that bureaucrats seek to impose it on other people's children, leaving parents out of the equation. This makes it malicious. That is one aspect that I find is the most abhorrent with this whole situation, especially certain states. And it's always the same bad actors, right? It's the California kind of types where when it comes to the issue of abortion, they want to pass laws that say, hey, if you're 14, you don't have to tell your parents about you going to get this medical procedure. Oh, hey, if you're 14, you don't have to get your parents involved now if you want to actually start taking puberty blockers. I mean, that's going to be the next thing if they haven't tried it already. And I think that's part of the reason why we're getting this kind of decision handed down now to clarify for the states that want to make it abundantly certain that, no, we're not going to allow this, that, well, that's their purview. That's their constitutional duty as a right that's reserved to the people and the state to make that decision. Sean out there for $5. Could a court bring back Lochner to allow for employees to hire illegal aliens under a right to contract or substantive due process? Ron, I'll let you handle that one.
Lochner versus New York.
Okay.
A decision that ruled 1905. Okay, we can't blame everything on Roosevelt. That in New York State, limiting working hours for bakers violated the freedom of contract under the 14th Amendment. They found that this was, I mean, I say you can't blame everything on Roosevelt. Well before Roosevelt, the reaction to the Lochner decision was basically the empowerment. Well, this is the true progressive era, not what we see today. I'm not saying, I'm not endorsing it. You do have to understand, though, if it weren't for unions are doctrinally suspect because they involve coercion to some extent. But if it weren't for the progressive reforms and for labor unions of 100, 125, 150 years ago, life would have been pretty crappy for the majority of working Americans in this country. As again, the pendulum swung,
different
and
times,
unions resulted in our losing, abuses. And also the way unions took over the political process in many states. We don't have time for that tonight. But with Lochner, could the court bring back Lochner? It really could, but it's not that Lochner's is, I don't know if Lochner's actually not good law. I think that Congress Well, I mean, no. So the New Deal, once the pro-labor legislation that came in the 1950s, and that was eventually in the 1930s and 40s, that was eventually accepted by the Supreme Court. I don't think the cultural foundation is there to accept a return to Lochner. Dream on.
Yeah. Albertus Magnus for 2. A renegade, you're 100% correct. I think that's we got into the discussion.
I don't think you even needed L99 to get that on the screen.
I'll take it anyway. Albertus Magnus for 5. If SCOTUS has no delegated power, neither does Congress or the executive.
I saw this comment a while ago, and I just couldn't figure out what it was in reference to.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I'm trying to think like what I must have missed. There's something probably we said or referenced or something we read from the article
like an hour ago.
Yeah. What time was that? About 30 minutes ago from what it looks like. So I got to go back and I have to figure that one out. Marcus Quintus for 5. Breaking Renegade Nation news flash. Mexican Iron Man is still a YouTuber. And Mike's getting beat up even in this chat. Istophobos for 2. Hey, VR, glad to see you're growing. Love the new channel. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys being here. Yep. We had a good show on the main channel last night. For those of y'all that missed it, go back and catch it. It's on the member side. I'm sure we'll have clips. Michelle actually hopped in with me, not like remote. She was sitting in a chair next to me. So we're up there in Tennessee, got to hang out for a little bit with some friends up there. And Natalie was supposed to be there. She went to sleep. She fell asleep. I was like, figures. They had a girls' weekend in Atlanta. So they were going the whole weekend while I was up there shopping for property. And they got back in Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, right in the middle of the show.
So you're saying that the weekend identified as a girl?
Yes, the weekend identified as a girl. It was a gender.
It's that weekend's truth.
Yes, it was a gender non-binary weekend. So, but yeah, Michelle got to hop in, which was nice. Natalie showed up after the show was over. She finally got there. She's like, I was so tired. I was like, you probably slept in the car ride home from Atlanta because I'm sure Michelle drove. But yeah, it was good to hang out this weekend. So go back and catch that. We talked about some of the box office stuff from the weekend and a few other fun things. Hillis Mallory for 5. My Obamacare offer to me, $750 a month, $7,000 deductible. No thanks. I'll take Yeah, I've been telling people for years.
But COBRA's only good for 6 months, guys.
Depending on the state. I think in Louisiana it's good for 12.
All right,
it's still either state continuation or COBRA, depending. Every state has different, and that's part of the problem is that every state has something different in it, which is why we have, the same insurance company has 50 different entities to operate in 50 different states just to comply with all the cuckoo laws. It's actually why a lot of financial companies have left New York. I mean, by and large, if you look at especially the insurance companies, life insurance, annuities, variable annuities, and all this kind of stuff, they have one entity for New York. Yep. And they have another entity for the other 49 states. It's every single one of them, and there's a reason for that because it's such a mess. I think that gets us all caught up. Ron, I know you had the other one you wanted to kind of briefly touch, or you want to touch on that other one you mentioned with the education or the.
Well, I did touch it. I touched on it. I mean,
okay.
Supreme Court case, family values. If your school is shoving, weirdo books down the throat of your young children, you as a parent have a First Amendment right, a religious freedom right to make them stop. That's pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, again, common sense, right? And for the folks up there, I'm going to scroll into this so you can see. For people who are interested that are sycophants, you can go over here. It's just the Supreme Court website. Here's the opinions. You can see this is a lot of stuff that was released in the past week. And I think, as Ron pointed out, some of these are kind of dry, technical things, and some of these are the big, baseball bat to the face kind of decisions, like we've been covering at length tonight. And I guess you mentioned, I know, Mahmoud versus Taylor. That's the one I think you were referring to earlier. So that's in here. And again, we could probably, you could spend hours and hours and hours tearing through each of these things, the dissenting opinions, some of the funny stuff to laugh at. But to me, it's just, we're at a point now where I'm really enjoying the fact that the Supreme Court justices that frankly have no business being there intellectually, constitutionally, in terms of their stance on things, just their complete absent-mindedness when it comes to what their job is, are going to get called out for it. And I'm loving every minute of it, because it needs to happen, right? And you cannot, and I think this is the problem, especially with the people like Ketanji Brown. And somebody wait, you know what? Let me bring this up before I forget. I thought, this is kind of a final thought for the evening. And Ron, I'm guessing you probably saw this. Maybe you didn't. I thought this was so hilariously poignant. Let me scroll down. Here it is. Hang on. All right, here we go. I loved this. I think this is amazing. So 6 justices were okay signing on to an opinion where Justice Barrett took a personal shot at Justice Jackson is a very strong indication that Jackson has alienated her colleagues and there is a growing lack of respect for her work.
Well, I didn't see that.
All right.
But I think that hit the nail on the head.
It gets better. Justices circulate memos among each other, I think is what he meant, with their legal views on certain cases in order to bring others around to their thinking. Given what she has written in her dissent, imagine the memos that Jackson must have sent around in this case. Barrett aptly boils it down to a single point. Jackson would elevate the primacy of single district judges about the executive because they are, quote, the court in the separation of powers. And there's a point, and again, this was specifically to the case about these rogue federal judges, as we call them, just handing down these opinions when plaintiffs will go arguably judge shopping to go find a very favorable left-leaning Democrat judge in a left-leaning Democrat district to go say, I'm going to go spank Donald Trump, like Wasberg. That's kind of who we're talking about here. I mean, that one guy kept handing out, oh, you can't deport this. Oh, you can't do this with ICE. Oh, you can't terminate this department. Oh, you can't stop the funding, even though it's all fraud at USAID. Oh, you can't. I mean, again, what are the powers of the executive at this point? And the Supreme Court said, hang on, inferior court judges, slow your roll. You ain't got all this power. Somebody then responded to this, what I thought was amazing. Brown Jackson loves hearing herself talk to, and then posts this chart comparing the average number of words spoken per argument October through December of the 2022 session for SCOTUS. Justice Jackson takes the cake with a whopping 1,400 plus words per argument. And the second and third place, no surprise, Kagan and Sotomayor, the other 2 of the 3 very leftist, women on the court, is what it is.
They're trying to talk their way out of following the law.
Yeah, exactly. Look who is, and I love this, look who says the fewest words by far. Clarence Thomas, the most brilliant man on the court, who doesn't need 1,400 words.
Thomas didn't speak for 20 years.
He didn't. I know. but he crafted some of the most brilliant opinions. And typically, I don't know if there's ever been the side of a decision that Thomas has come down on that I went, oh my God, he's so wrong. I mean, it's just not. because
All
the
right,
man
but you're
follows the
prejudiced.
Constitution. I am prejudiced. I'm
You're
very
prejudiced
prejudiced.
in favor of the Constitution and also against
Yes.
white people.
That's it. That must be what it is. Right. I have to wonder, what is it like for Clarence Thomas sitting on that court, having to suffer through Ketanji Jackson on this? You know, she was the first black woman ever appointed, blah, blah, blah. Clarence Thomas, in order to become a black justice on this court, got dragged over the coals, accused of all kind of crazy stuff. And if you think we're talking about Brett Kavanaugh, you're right. But Clarence Thomas came first in that regard.
And remember who led the charge? Grandpa Joe Biden.
That's right. Joe Biden. Joe Biden. I don't remember him telling that corn pop story during those Senate confirmation hearings. But we got him 30 years later. All right. There you have it, kids. Appreciate everybody hanging out tonight. Ron, any final thoughts here as we wind it down?
Well, really, it's nice going into the summer with these wins. People are impatient.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there was damage done in some cases by the court waiting as long as they did on some of these things. But they did do it. They did do some of what still has to be done. A lot of people are impatient with Pam Bondi, people who really should know better. You don't just throw people in jail unless you're Biden, okay?
Mm.
But if you want to do real criminal prosecutions and investigations, that takes time.
Yeah.
All the things, hot takes, fast takes, they're usually wrong, especially the more complicated things get. The wronger you are. Stop being wrong. Listen to Renegade Nation.
Yeah, there you go. I'll take that one. And we got one more in here from Marcus Quintus. Cloned direwolves. I see where you're going with. Yeah, clone Scalia. Get him back on the court. Scalia and Thomas were man, those two together were just amazing. And my understanding, very, very close, kind of best buddies off the court too. So any case, yeah, Scalia was it. I pray that when it's Clarence Thomas's time to retire, which may be during this administration of Trump, you never know. But he is going to retire when he feels most confident in that there'll be somebody to replace him worthy of his chair, those are some big damn shoes to fill. But hopefully we'll definitely get a good one. So anyways, all right, guys, we're getting on out of here. We'll see you on the next show. Take care. I appreciate you. Have a good night.